Las Vegas Discount.net's the best there is. Save up to 50% on your next Vegas trip. And travel, rental, shows, and tours. Find the deals you're looking for. Las Vegas Discount.net. Las Vegas Discount.net. If you're going to Vegas for deals that are the best, visit Las Vegas Discount.net.
Are you a real estate agent, realtor, investor, or are you in the real estate business and you need new listings and deals? We have a solution for you, and that solution has guaranteed results. How much would you pay to get face-to-face with a homeowner that wants to sell their home? What if you also got their email address and daytime phone number? And what if this homeowner also scheduled you to come to their door at a set time to meet with you? Sound too good to be true? It isn't. And it is 100% guaranteed for you to meet face-to-face with a real homeowner who really needs to sell their home. Not only will you get this remarkable contact system and its 100% guarantee, at no additional charge, you will get weekly coaching, documents, and training on how to get that homeowner and convert them into a new listing. When you purchase, you'll also get a one-on-one walkthrough so that you can start using the system today. Visit www.thelistingmonster.com. That's www.thelistingmonster.com. Or call Diana Ortiz at 213-706-0040. Stop wasting time the old way. Use a monster and get actual results today.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to your weekly broadcast, coaching call, and pseudo podcast. All those wonderful things. This is the wonderful world of monster marketing, distressed properties. As you guys know from previous week, David Bartels is on vacation. If you have any questions, go to HomeLoanAdvocates.com or write to David at HomeLoans with an S, advocates.com. And that takes care of that business. Today, I have a very special guest, my very longtime friend. I guess the correct terminology, if I'm using it correctly, you are a whale investor or facilitator. He's been in the business forever. He's been a lender. He's been an investor. When we talk, he talks more like an asset manager, a property inspector. He's got all those things under a belt. It is my pleasure to introduce my friend, Robert-Fragoso. How are you doing today, Robert?
I'm doing well. You know, it's always fun to kind of come on your calls here and just see the questions and hear what people are doing now. I always like to judge what, the agents and how the market's adjusting as things progress. And, I think I find it pretty interesting, especially getting a real estate agent's perspectives a lot of times from the questions here. It gives you a little bit different perspective than what I get to see, because most of the deals come, kind of packaged up for me already. So that it's always good to see. So how are generally, people that are on the call, how are they doing? I mean,
and everybody on the call, go ahead and chime in and I'll read those out. I will give you the general perception that I've seen, at least on webinars and here on the coaching call. We've certainly seen a slowdown. That is a predominant and overwhelming thing that's occurring in the market. I'll tell you the trend that I find most fascinating while people load up some questions. The predominant thing that I see going on with the market that I find astonishing, and feel free, anybody do this, go on Google and look for actual tangible news about the real estate market. There's really nothing tangibly going on. I've never seen such a stalemated period. I could say maybe back remember the plateau before the spike of the last rundown, where we went into that period where we had a rise and then it just plateaued for a period of time, and then they dropped the lending guidelines and we had a huge spike in business. that period of time feels very close to this period of time. The only difference I see from a news standpoint, everybody's convinced it's a bubble, and I don't think it's a bubble anymore. I'm actually in a very rarefied crowd. I think we're going to decline, and I think we're going to see defaults. But the lack of general news is astonishing. Like usually between Housing Wire and DS News and Inman and Market Watch and these sources that basically it's an industry much like mine, right? It's based on 1.5 million real estate agents, a million investors. You create news, you click them onto your site. They're not generating stories at all. I mean, I can't even find good fluff pieces right now on the internet on a daily basis. That's my perception. What is it like for you? I know that your deals are all California based. So what's it like for you market to market?
You know, I'll tell you, I think that right now, you know, economically speaking, we're actually doing pretty good. Now, that's despite that we potentially could have a negative GDP month, given you know what's going on with the shutdown and what have you, and that model actually might come true. I mean, there's still a few different things that have to happen, but if it lasts for a very long time, it could definitely affect some things. You know, it's interesting that, you know, I look at the government shutdown and you see that this, you know, it's kind of really it's a partial shutdown, but you look at it and it kind of almost, you know, most things are still going on. The stuff's still working. The world's not coming to an end. Now, there are people that aren't getting paid, and, you know, I get that people are in an uproar, but most of the actual government workers are they're furloughed and not laid off, right? And so, well, they're working right now. They've just missed this one paycheck, and they're about to miss a second paycheck, right? So it's not like, you know, I hear like, I don't know, I watch a lot of these rants that are on different kind of economic calls, and the call is you've got all these people working and they're not getting paid. And I mean, the truth is none of them get paid daily, right? They accumulate the hours and they get a check. And when they're furloughed, they get paid. All of that back time is going to eventually come. They're issued vouchers right now. And so you don't have that economic issue that the naysayers say will be created, at least not as quickly. And when it's prolonged, then you start to see a little bit more effect, because what happens is that you've got all the government contractors that work on a contract and they're paying their employees. They don't have the option to furlough their employees, so they lay them off. So when they get laid off, they then do not, you know, get paid for that time. And so that's a little bit different than if you're an actual government worker. So, and that's I think a much larger number also when you get into the big picture and all the different contracts that are out there. So I think that can affect things for you know, at least in the short run. But I would expect something like that to bounce back pretty quickly. We have had, you know, the largest economic growth cycle almost ever. And I think it's either June or July, it will be the largest consecutive economic growth cycle ever in U.S. history. I mean, and we're at like 99 months right now, or I think we're at 99 months. And you look at that type of growth cycle. I mean, that's really unheard of. I mean, for sure, we won't see that again in our lifetime. The last time it happened was shortly after the Great Depression, and they had a life cycle just like ours. And we had, you know, it makes sense that, you know, coming out of this Great Recession, that we had a great growth plan. I will say that, you know, when you look at, and I'm just going to talk about the U.S. as a whole, and you look at job creation, I mean, it's really phenomenal what's happened, you know, over the course of the last few years, where, you know, you did have a lot higher unemployment coming out of the recession, and, you know, things got a little bit better and they kind of trekked along a little bit. And then you have, you know, optimism that just kind of boosted, and job creation grew, and it trumped the available workforce. Now, you know, we're pretty close to, you know, we're getting pretty close to what would be considered full employment. There's always going to be an unemployment numbers, because you've got, you know, the normal just people who get fired or laid off and that normal kind of back and forth. But that's not really, true unemployment, because there's just some people that kind of suck at their jobs, right? So they get laid off. Right. But as a whole, if you look at the U.S., we're doing really phenomenally. Our prime age workforce is really strong. They are now getting to the age, and you look at the millennials and the millennial group, that's the biggest sector of it. They're now coming into their 30s, and even as late bloomers as they're considered, once you start to hit your 30s, and this will be good for housing in probably 20, 21, 22, 23, something like that, is that, they start to date more serious. And once they start to do that, you get household formations that happen, and they start, they move out of the mom's basement and start buying houses. And so, there has been this talk a lot, because sales numbers have, I think have been pretty good, but most, like you listen to NAR and CAR, and they sometimes talk about like sales numbers and volumes are being off because they need more inventory and more inventory. And the reality is that, inventory right now has been meeting demand. And there's a few things that kind of came on, from an investor standpoint that I looked at, and I said, okay, well, the reality is, inventory is meeting demand. And part of the reason that you didn't have as much inventory that hit the market as you have in past cycles is that we've really, as investors, and builders and everything that's out there, is we've changed the life cycle and the tenure that people live in homes. And you're seeing that, so pre-downturn, I think people were moving in and out of houses. The average was like 6.5 years. It's now over 10 years. And the reason for that is a few things. One is that your household size has really increased. So if you remember, I'll use all these homes that were built after the war, and you look back in the 50s, and these homes are, they're 600 to 1,200 square feet, 1,400 square feet. Larger homes were that 1,600 square foot home. And so now everyone got into the kind of building these little mini mansions and maxing out the square footage, especially in areas like California, where, if you're basing on your valuation on cost per square foot, and, really the reality is that most of the value's in the dirt anyway, but they're paying a premium for larger homes. The home sizes went up to 2,000, 2,500, 3,500 square feet. Whatever you can max it out on that lot is what people were doing. And so now when that happens, you have these multi-generational homes that started to occur because there was no need for the people to move out. And millennials could stay longer because their parents' homes were bigger. If their parents' homes were, 900 square feet, they would have moved out like our generation moved out, because they wanted to move out and they wanted their own space. But, you're living in a 3,500 square foot house, you have your own space within that. And then you start to see, as the parents get older, kids stay and what have not. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is that coming out of the downturn, usually builders start building single families. Right. And this cycle, they didn't build single families. They really built multifamilies. And so all you need to do is really drive around downtown LA, and the skyline is completely different than it was pre-downturn. And same thing with Hollywood. Hollywood is completely transformed. In fact, I grew up in Hollywood, and, I was driving down Sunset Boulevard, and the street where I would have turned off to go to, where I grew up as a kid, I didn't even recognize, and drove right by it until I saw the Arby's, which is, a landmark there. And I'm like, oh crap, that's the Arby's already. And what happened to all these other, like what I would consider landmarks to tell me where to turn off? They're now mini high rises and high rise. And even the street where I grew up on, all the little rows of houses have been torn down or mostly torn down, and now they're multifamilies. And, it's just that's where the building went, because if you were going to build, if you're going to get into building, there was a big need for rentals. All of the studies said that, especially coming out of the downturn, that the millennials didn't want to buy homes, which turned out not to be true, because they're starting to buy homes now. But at the time they didn't, they were looking for, really more of a lifestyle than they were just investments. And as they're aging now, that's starting to change. So I do think that, from an economic standpoint that we do look pretty good. And there's, I mean, I think there's, what is there, like 6 signs